Hey everybody, you're listening to the Fuzz Life Podcast. I'm Jason Johnson from Fuzzlord Effects, and today I'm sitting down with Jered Johnson from Beholden To The Riff. Jered is a guitar and a bass instructor in Portland, Oregon, and recently he started a YouTube channel and an Instagram page called Beholden To The Riff, where he's doing a bunch of really cool bass guitar lessons. So if you are a bass player or a guitar player, I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. We're going to get started right now. Jered, thanks for taking the time to do this today.
Thank you, man. This is so cool to come out here and meet you and having me on the podcast. Really appreciate it, man.
I feel the same way, man. I've been really enjoying your bass guitar lessons lately. I think my favorite one that I've been messing with is the At Giza bass lesson by Ohm.
Awesome. Yeah, that one of my first ones, one of my favorite ones still. I had started to, somebody had asked me to do it. So there's no tab. There's any tab that I could find was inaccurate. There was just something that didn't sound right about it.
Totally, because these are such like specific songs that aren't super popular, especially bands like Ohm.
Yeah.
So for people that are just tuning in and aren't familiar with who you are and what you do at Beholden To The Riff, could you just tell us about who you are, what it is you're doing with music, and maybe some background about how you got so good at bass?
Sure. Well, I'm Jered, and Beholden To The Riff is kind of came out of just a want to get to play more music and be more involved in teaching and just, putting value into the world. Man, I started playing guitar when I, a kid in high school, playing Sabbath, playing Zeppelin, Hendrix, all this stuff, driving my dad crazy. Then went to music school and played classical guitar, which, now with bass comes in super handy, having all these, my right hand technique is,
right.
Yeah, it just had tons of carryover. Really awesome. So played classical guitar just in college, just to study, but secretly was playing electric guitar the whole time. So, practicing classical, learning all the theory and all that stuff, getting the degree, but knowing the whole time that I love heavy music. So that was always the direction that I wanted to take my playing. Got out of guitar for a little bit, but then actually didn't play for almost 10 years, and then got back into it and just fell right back in love with it instantly. Started playing around the house, got a new guitar, got acoustic guitar, got, built up the amp collection, not back to where it was, but, slowly. And then I actually went over, when I first met my girlfriend, she was living with my current band that I'm in, okay. Light Creates Shadow.
Cool.
So I come into the kitchen, to hang out, and Mark, the kind of the songwriter and guitarist, singer, he's there and he's wearing a Russian Circles shirt. And I'm like, oh, dude, I was literally just listening to Russian Circles on the way over. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Killer shirt. And he's like, oh, yeah. So it was almost like as soon as I started playing music again, almost like a, serendipity kind of took over.
Yeah.
And so I met, now I'm still, later they needed a bassist, maybe a few months later. Tried out, had never played bass before. Luckily, my roommate at the time had a bass and a rig that I could borrow. Tried out, made the band, and man, just fell in love with bass instantly. Like, got it bad. Like, love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're living in Portland. You got back into playing bass again. You're playing with Light Creates Shadow.
That's right.
And then how did the whole lessons thing start? Because you're a private instructor in Portland, so people in Portland in the area could, of course, get a hold of you for guitar and bass lessons.
Totally. So it was I think it may have been a suggestion of one of the students, like their parents were like, "Hey man, you should start a YouTube channel." And it's just at the time I was like, "Yeah, okay." And then I think he just planted the seed, and every once in a while I would think about it, and then I would see, Rick Beato channel, seen him. We were talking before, Marty Schwartz had a big, influence on that. And eventually ran into Does It Doom, Steve at Does It Doom, and it's like, man, this is really cool, and just tried it, and super nervous, all hesitant to do it, but did the first video, threw it up, let's see what happens, kind of a thing, and been doing it ever since. I've been taking it. Every video is built on a song request. Okay. So I just did the first one, and every one since then has just been, hey man, could you play, Marijuana's theme? Like, yeah, dude, let's do it.
So could you name some of the songs that you've done lessons on your channel? Because I get messages probably once a week about bass players wanting to hear more bass lessons, and they're like emailing me, or I hear sometimes Steve gets these emails too. So then I think there's all these people out there that just haven't heard of you yet, that they need to be on your channel watching these bass lessons. So you've been doing a bunch of Sleep, some Black Sabbath, I think.
Yep, some Black Sabbath. I did a Tool video, Baroness, that's killer. That's such a great song. I think went under the radar a little bit.
Okay.
That album is amazing. Like, it seriously great. I foresee doing every song in the catalog, probably every Sleep song. It's by far the most requested stuff. Yeah.
I got hooked on your channel as soon as I saw that you're doing stuff, because that's one of my favorite all-time bands. Like, that whole vibe and that sound, it just really does it for me.
Oh, dude, like when I first moved to Portland, I was living at this place, and I had to cut the grass, and I would put on God is Good, Ohm's God is Good.
Yeah.
And I would cut the grass on this riding lawnmower, and the landlord would come out and watch, and he would laugh to himself because I would be air drumming.
Oh,
and
cool.
I would it's the greatest. I could listen to that album on repeat forever and be, totally fine. It's the best. Yeah. So
speaking of your channel and your lessons, of course, that's on YouTube and Instagram. And on Instagram, it's Beholden To The Riff, and it's beholden.to.the.riff for folks that are interested. I'm going to leave a link in the description. And of course, Beholden To The Riff on YouTube. Something that I realized watching your lessons was that, for one, you're providing tablature in these lessons, and it also has written music, so that whole background in music is shining through. So really cool to see that level of musicianship in teaching in this genre. But there's a couple things that you've been doing that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, because it was something that I was kind of surprised about watching your stuff. You're doing these cool tabs that go with your lessons, that there's like a program that we can use to like loop and slow down. Can you tell us more about that? Because that's really special about your channel.
Oh, thanks, man. It's with every lesson, as I'm transcribing it, I put it into a program. It's called Sound Slice. And so I use this program to write all the tab, and it syncs to the song. So I take an actual YouTube video, put it into the tab, and you can play the song along with the tab as you're learning it, and you can slow it down, and you can loop the section that you're working on. And I wish this was around when I was learning.
I know, that's a lot different than moving the record needle or like rewinding the cassette tape over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's so helpful to learn it. And as I'm transcribing it, this is how I do it too. I just put it on loop a section, and you can slow it down. It doesn't affect the pitch at all, and just work it out from there. Loop it, figure out each note and go from there.
And the same thing, even for folks that don't have you said a sound slice software. I think a lot of people aren't aware that on YouTube, when we're watching your lessons, we can do the same thing where we can slow the speed of the video down without changing the pitch. Because I'm bringing this up because I was playing along to your At Giza lesson, and then during the trickier parts, I couldn't quite keep up with it. And then it hit me. I was like, oh, why am I not slowing this down?
Yeah. That song is a monster. It's so much going on.
A lot going on.
Yeah, and that slowdown feature is just, it's killer. It's the only reason I can figure half of these songs out, man. And the sound slice thing in the YouTube video, you can, like, I put the link right in there so you can download it. You don't need the program. It's just a link. You just go right to the tab.
Good to know.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome.
I think I'm going to download that and try to play along to the At Giza again. I bet you I get a little farther.
It's going to help you for sure.
So, being that you are a private music teacher and that you're also doing these public lessons for the world on YouTube and Instagram, I got some questions from other musicians that they were hoping I'd ask you today about, like, kind of a two-part thing. If you had any tips for general practice stuff, as far as, like, how can folks like me and other people learn these songs well, and then also maybe some of your thoughts on if someone wanted to learn more about music theory, where would they start? Because it's such a broad thing. Step one, where would we go to?
Great question. Let's start with the practice. So the way that I like to look at practice is to start with, like, I'll ask my students, how much time are you going to actually practice? Like, I know you're going to tell me an hour or whatever, but, like, really, how much time are you going to practice? How many days a week are you going to practice? Realistically, if it's 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes,
that's fine.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine. Now it's just a matter of how are we going to best use that 10 minutes of practice?
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's a way different approach than I've ever thought of it.
Yeah, man. It's helped me out a lot. It's been huge.
So what would you recommend? Like, again, you're saying these are all specific scenarios where one person might have 10 hours a week, but the next woman only has, an hour a day, and then the next teenage kid is 10 minutes because he's playing Fortnite. What do you recommend? Like, what's a good practice amount of time per week? The
most important part is consistency. So if it's 10 minutes every day for a week is better than a 5-hour session on Saturday, because you get to slowly build up all the things that you're learning on, and it kind of builds on itself. You get to keep it under your fingers. It keeps it, in your thought, in your mind, and you can work it out.
Yeah.
Way better. Also, if it's only 10 minutes, like, I like to break it into half.
Okay.
So, like, if it's 10 minutes, 5 minutes of technique or scales or alternate picking or whatever you're working on, and then 5 minutes of songs, jamming, just straight, have fun. And, I mean, if you did that, if you got yourself an hour to practice, I mean, a half hour on technique every single day, you're going to be a beast. And then half hour of jamming, awesome.
So it sounds like even if we only had 10 or 15 minutes, as long as we're doing that every day or several times a week, or like keeping it's not just 2 hours on Monday and then not play for a week.
Totally.
The consistency.
Yeah, it's the consistency. Hands down.
I really like that. And I think just the way you described that is going to make it really clear for people to ask themselves that exact question. How much time do I really have to give to this? Or how much do they want to invest in it?
Yeah.
Because we all have time. We can all make the time, right? So what about the music theory thing? So someone's let's say they start practicing, they're getting pretty good at songs, they're playing along, or maybe in a band, but they want to take it to that next level and understand some of the things that you've been including in a bunch of your lessons videos, like about intervals and scales and things like that. Well, where would be a good place for someone to start learning?
I would suggest, and I've had the best experience while teaching, it's whatever you're most interested in at the time. So, you could buy theory books and you could buy all this stuff, and, it might start out at something that's you're just totally not into. Like, some people don't care about intervals or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, it's a lot harder to slog through that stuff than it is to just learn a little bit about theory about something that you're really into at the time. So, like, maybe it's a rhythmic pattern. Like, that's part of theory too, like being able to clap a certain rhythm, or to know, how to notate that rhythm or how to read that rhythm.
Yeah.
Like, if you're learning tab and they're nice enough to include that on there,
right?
Then you can look at that and you're able to then play that.
So I've been noticing on your page and on your YouTube channel and on your Instagram page, you've been including these cool, like, it's like a post that'll have like 5 or 6 pictures, and you're calling it like a microdose of music theory.
That's right.
And I think those are really helpful. Then the ones you just posted that I'm thinking of as you're talking about reading tempos or like reading different rhythms and stuff is how you explained triplets recently. Could you share that for folks?
Totally. This was just like the microdose music theory thing was just a kind of, this is a new thing that I've been trying out and posting about, but it's something that I thought is cool. I loved learning it, so I thought, hey, why not? Other people might dig it too. So the last one I posted was about the blues shuffle, and so it's I'm working on a lesson right now by the band Orchid. The song's Capricorn, and the rhythmic structure is a blues shuffle essentially. So I just the last post just kind of broke down what a blues shuffle is, how you can maybe go about learning it, and then threw a few examples in there as well. Mm-hmm. So the key to a blues shuffle is mastering the triplet.
Yeah.
So when I learned triplets, I was told to count it triplet.
Yeah.
And so I thought it would hit home a little harder if I put it as I owe me.
That's way more fun to say.
way more
fun to say.
For sure. Sure.
And the cool thing I thought about that post, one of my favorite things about it is you listed off like 5 or 6 famous songs that use that rhythmic pattern. And then when I read it, I was trying to think of it. I was like, what are these songs that would come up? And I'm thinking Dotted Eighth Note, Blues Shuffle. I'm thinking Muddy Waters and this and that, but most people aren't familiar with that. And then the first thing you said was Red House.
Yep.
I could hear it, I think, right now. Everyone can hear it right now.
Totally.
Saying, I owe me.
That's right.
I really dig the microdose thing because I think a lot of people are kind of intimidated by the whole music theory aspect because it's just a big pill to swallow all at once. So,
yeah, it seems to be an area of resistance with a lot of musicians, and especially heavier musicians, guitarists, especially. It's something that isn't completely necessary to be amazing. Like, to produce amazing music. Hendrix is a great example.
You don't have to understand it on paper.
On paper. But all music theory is a way to communicate with other musicians. So if you get a piece of music and you can now play it, that's just the notation on the paper is communicating to you how the song goes, and now you can play it, and that's incredible, right? And then you can, like, if we're having a conversation, we can, more efficiently communicate our musical ideas to each other when we have this language at our disposal.
Right.
Right.
So maybe that'll be some incentive to folks of why this stuff's important, because you can totally play and be in a band, have fun, get all the good stuff out of music without it, but it sure opens a lot of doors.
That's it. It's all that matters is, does it sound cool or not?
Yeah.
Like, all the theory in the world doesn't matter. But like I was saying before, it's just a great way to communicate just more clearly with other musicians, with your band, with anybody.
So while we're talking about music theory and like different musicians and maybe how much theory and stuff they knew, as someone that teaches music and has been dissecting all these songs, especially focusing on Ohm and Sleep, Jered, I was wanting to know if you could give everyone your opinion on Al Cisneros as a musician and his bass playing, because I think he's a little bit, everyone likes him. Everyone likes Sleep, but I think a lot of us have really overlooked how amazing and prolific he is.
100%. He's a beast on every level. His parts are not only his bass parts are not only like heavy and like sweet riffs, but they serve the song in just a perfect way. He knows when to when the song needs to move, when the song needs to get a little heavier, when the song needs to get a little more groove to it. Like, he just instinctively knows what the song needs in order to be, fully expressed. And his technique is flawless. His tone is amazing. This guy is insane. And totally underappreciated, and I don't think it's anywhere near the credit he deserves, other than like in the doom and stoner community.
Yeah. And then I think we were talking about this before we started recording, about how now that you've been analyzing his music and his lessons, you're looking at the same songs differently.
Oh man, for sure. Learning these parts and really diving in there, getting in deep. You get to see all the little nuances that he's doing in these little subtle changes, and it's next level. Like, his playing is next level for sure.
So when I was on your YouTube channel and I was checking out a bunch of your lessons, specifically the ones centered around Al's bass playing, you mentioned something that I had never heard about before in theory, and I thought I was pretty hip on song structure and stuff. What can you tell us about the songwriting concept? I believe it's referred to as theme and variation. And I believe you're talking about that in one of your newer marijuana bass guitar lessons.
Yeah. So a theme and variation is when you take one musical phrase and center the whole song around it. So you play it one way, and then you make variations of it. So you can do rhythmic variations. You could change keys. You could do a whole bunch of stuff. And so while doing the marijuana theme lesson, I noticed that every time the vocals come in, Al plays a certain part. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if this is how they wrote it or anything, but I labeled that the marijuana theme. So it kind of, in like operas and all these, old ways of writing music, composing music, they would attach musical ideas, and you can see this in film today. So they would attach musical ideas to certain characters.
Okay.
And so I kind of got the impression that this is what was going on here. So they would attach this musical idea, which just so happened to be a heavy bass riff, to the theme of this marijuana character.
Yeah.
So every time the vocals would come in and they would be, talking about him going to planet Iomia, they would play a certain riff. And so, yeah, like I said, I wasn't in the room when they were writing it, and I don't, know if they consciously did this stuff. I kind of think they do, but they attach this musical idea to the marijuana, and so each section takes this marijuana's theme and plays it in a different way.
Okay.
One of the sections is like this build up, and he's like, Al kind of digs in deep on his bass. It gets more like a driving rhythmic feel. One of the marijuana theme leaves a lot of space. So it's boom, like he plays a note and he like lets it hang. Vocals come in and then picks up the riff, when the vocals go out again. The solo is in a theme and variation, in a traditional theme and variation. They would leave parts for improv. They would leave a whole improv section, and Al took over. Al and Mike, Al and Matt, they were just trading solos throughout this kind of traditional, I forget what they call it. There's like some, crazy word for it, but they would leave room for improv.
You know what? Now I'm just dying to know, like to get someone to talk to Matt and Al about this, because I believe Matt had a background in jazz guitar, as far as I'm familiar with.
Wow. I didn't know that. It wouldn't surprise me.
But that was one thing. That was something very interesting. You were talking about the beginning of your marijuana theme lesson. And it just, again, made me just have this new appreciation for music theory in general, this band, and the work you're doing to dissect all this stuff for everyone on your pages.
That's awesome, man. It's like on the tip of my tongue.
What's that? Like the getting back to the music theory, benefits and all this stuff. I've always found music theory as a way of looking at music in a different way and in a different perspective. Yeah.
So having all this kind of like tools in your toolbox, you just get to open up different parts of the music. So I've found that by being able to use these tools, I'm able to talk about bands like Sleep with people who, could care less about heavy music. And I can get, right. So like, oh, see, this is a theme and variation.
And someone in classical music can respect that.
Exactly.
Or opera,
or jazz or anything. So it's giving this music what I feel it deserves.
I totally understand.
Right? And vice versa. So as dudes who listen to heavy music, it also now that this little theme and variation thing is now a way, hopefully, that you can listen to other music and recognize you could see that in other music as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the bridge. It's like the bridge between worlds. Yeah.
I was so happy when I watched that lesson from you, just because it just tied Sleep to all these other different kinds of music. And it was like you said, it was giving the music kind of the credit that it deserves, which I believe is kind of a whole bunch of your ideas behind the work you're doing on your YouTube and your Instagram page, of like treating these songs with the musical respect that they really deserve, because stuff
100%.
Yes. Stuff's been overlooked quite a bit. I'm going to throw a curveball to you. Here's a statement that I just kind of want you to I want your thoughts. Black Sabbath is the heaviest jazz band of all time.
Yes, they are. This is something that my buddy told me, and he doesn't listen to a lot of heavy music, but he loves Sabbath, and we would jam it at work. And this is something that he said. He's like, I don't know, man. They always just sounded like this heavy jazz band because they'll have the riffs and the stuff at the beginning, but there's always a moment in a Sabbath song where you're like, what? How did they get here? Right?
For me, it's the album. I'll put an album on, and then I'll be doing dishes or something, and then I ask myself, what am I listening to?
Yeah.
And then I realize it's Black Sabbath. And I'm so impressed because they'll be playing like a really pretty part or something that reminds me of classical or like flamenco guitar or something.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Iommi's always doing this stuff. Little bit of jazz, a little bit of flamenco in there. I know Geezer Butler listened to a lot of classical music, and he credits, I forget what it is. I think it's the song Black Sabbath from listening to Holst.
Really?
The planets. Yeah, one of those.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Cool, right?
So,
and he was sitting in the studio trying to figure out this I think it was Saturn, the planet, the movement.
Yeah.
Saturn. And so he was playing it on bass, and he hit that tritone.
Okay.
And everybody looked at it like, ooh, here, what's this? And now we get the song, like killer song. Yeah.
So another cool thing about your lessons is I'm primarily a guitar player, and I've been playing along with guitar like to your lessons. So guitar players too should go check out your stuff. Where are you at on Instagram?
At Beholden To The Riff, with dots in between each word.
So that's beholden.to.the.riff. I'll leave a link in the description of this episode. Be sure you check out Jered's work on the Beholden To The Riff page. And again, you got the microdose music theory tidbits there, a bunch of your lessons there.
Yep.
Your lessons have tablature and written music. So, that stray oboe player or something could play along. Well, actually be a bassoon player.
That's
bass,
right.
Bass clef.
Yeah.
I'd pay big bucks to see that. Sleep songs played on bassoons. Electric. And then you have your YouTube channel, correct?
Yep.
Beholden To The Riff?
Yep. Beholden To The Riff.
We'll leave a link to that in the description. You do private lessons in Portland, Oregon. So how could people get a hold of you if they were interested in that?
Just DM me on the Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, through Instagram.
For sure. Even if you just have any questions or just want to, chat, just hit me up.
So people can just hit you up and ask you about your bass strings or setups and tips like that?
Yeah, please.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then you've been posting daily, it seems like, and interacting with all these people, which is really cool. Really nice to see. I, for one, really appreciate what you're doing because it takes a lot of time and effort to make these lessons. So, I mean, from me and everyone else listening, thank you for taking the time to do this because, I mean, we all have the same 24 hours in the day. So I appreciate you taking a big chunk out of yours to do something helpful for everybody.
Thanks, man. That really means a lot.
So again, that's Jered Johnson, Beholden To The Riff, and people can check you on the Instagram page at Beholden To The Riff, your YouTube channel. And for folks that are in the Portland area, you are also in a band called
Light Creates Shadow.
Light Creates Shadow. And then I believe you guys got a album you're working on recording soon.
Yep. Just finishing up the last track of our...
Very cool.
Yeah, going to start recording in a couple months. Yep.
So 2020, beginning of the year, real quickly, what are we going to see from you this year, man? What are your goals? What's happening?
I'd like to, first off, try to get a lesson I'm shooting for once a week, a new lesson. I'd posting daily, and really fully committing to this. This was kind of an experiment, maybe last year in August, and have gotten, just the response has been moving. So, just going to fully commit to this thing and see where it goes.
I've noticed a lot of very positive feedback and interaction on your YouTube comments.
Yeah.
And I totally encourage people to get on there and comment, because you're commenting back to people. That's something really special too, is like that you're taking the time to go back and interact with these people. I know we're a similar age, so I know me and you both remember pre-internet music.
Yeah.
And how it's like you learned a chord from, that one girlfriend you had, or like your buddy's brother or something.
Oh, yeah.
And then you didn't learn that new chord for a couple more years. But now we have channels like what you're doing. And I think it's just really cool, this big online community. People promoting positivity is kind of how I see it in general. So, Jered, I appreciate you taking the time to do this today.
It's been my pleasure, Jason. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Folks, you've been listening to the Fuzz Life podcast, and we've been talking to Jered Johnson from Beholden To The Riff. Again, Jered is a guitar and a bass instructor in Portland, Oregon, and I really think you should check out his page, Beholden To The Riff. That's beholden.to.the.riff, and then on YouTube under the same name. And whether you're a guitar or a bass player, I think you're really going to get something valuable out of checking him out, or just get inspired to do your own music, or check out some of the microdose music theory on his page. I really appreciate you taking the time to check out the Fuzz Life podcast. Again, I'm Jason Johnson, and I look forward to talking to you next week.